With the Indiana Pacers now finalizing their trade for Pascal Siakam for Bruce Brown and count them, three first-round picks, we have to ask the question, could AK net the same return for Zach Lavine? We're not going to get the intro. We're going to jump straight right into it. This is the Chicago Bulls Breeze. Your boy P. Kid. You know what I do. Let's get into the video, man. Right now, the Indiana Pacers are looking to make moves to not only get someone who fits their scheme, but he actually helps do something that they actually need a little bit of help on, and that's rebounding and things of that nature. Pascal Siakam fits what they do. So needless to say, they were willing to pay a premium for him. That's just what it was. Now the question is, should the Bulls, be able to net that same return? And the question is, maybe not. Well, the answer is maybe not. And the real reason I say that is because ultimately you have to look at it from this perspective. The Chicago Bulls are in a situation where we have nothing but a plethora of guards. And right now, there are only a few teams that actually need what Zach Lavine provides. I'm a Zach fan. I love what he does. I think he is a top 10 shooting guard in this particular league. But if you go around the league, you look at the teams who are in contention or things of that nature, there are not many who need a Zach Lavine. In fact, the window, I think, for that type of talent has closed. Mainly because there's a lot of people now focused on one or two things. One, the teams that really need it already have premier guards. If you look at the Sacramento Kings have De'Aaron Fox. They have a good shooter in Herter. They actually have Malik Monk, who's also a guard. Now, are they collectively, could they be or put output more than Zach? Yes. But individually, are they? Maybe, maybe not. But they're not far off if I'm comparing Malik Monk and Zach Lavine. And they already have what's apparently the number one buzzword now, consistency, and they have familiarity. The Kings, who were in the market, they don't need Zach Lavine. The Toronto Raptors didn't need Zach Lavine. They just got RJ Barrett and they just got Emmanuel Quickly. They have a system that's working for them. They don't need another premier guard. They needed to find ways to kind of retool their team into the future because, as you can see, RJ Barrett is relatively young. So is Emmanuel Quickly. It just makes sense for their situation. So you have to ask yourself, what teams need a Zach Lavine? And then based off those teams, who are on those teams, and ultimately what can they get back for that? Pascal Siakam also is an interesting situation because he got to control realistically how that works out because he didn't have to resign. So for him to be going to Indiana, there must be some inclination that he is going to sign some type of extension and avoid free agency because you don't give up that type of haul for someone who is not going to re-sign with you. And if they did, they got fleeced. But we know that that's not the case. And the Indiana Pacers have a good, with their point guard, things of that nature, they have a tall lineup now, and they also have one where anyone can get a bucket. If you look at what they traded, I like Bruce, but he wasn't going to be able to do what Pascal Siakam does. If you look at how they run, how free-flowing and stuff like that, Siakam would thrive in that system. It's worth that particular risk. There is nothing that has come up that would make sense for anyone to do outside of maybe the Lakers, if the Lakers were to include Austin Reeves. But I have to ask you, would you do it? So here's where I sit there and say, no, I don't think Zach Lavine would get that same type of haul, mainly because AK constructed this team so poorly that he poisoned his own trade value. I stand on that. He constructed this team so haphazardly, or it hinged, not haphazardly. He hinged his bet on one particular player, and he was never able to replicate that. With Lonzo Ball, everyone looked great. He was a pass-first point guard who could shoot. But he was a pass-first point guard who was 6'7", who could defend like crazy. That's different. Everyone else, there has been no significant moves to replicate that. I like Kobe White. Kobe White is going to be a great guard in this league. He was not the same type of guard as Lonzo Ball, who was pass-first. Kobe White's a playmaker. There's a difference. There's not to disparage him. There's not to say he's bad. That's not any of those things. He's a different guard, and you need a different guard to replicate what you had with Lonzo Ball. We hedged our bet on Lonzo Ball coming back. That didn't happen. So right now, if you ask me if we have that, the answer is flat out no. And this is all, again, pointing back to what are you doing with this roster? What are you trying to replicate here? How are you actually doing that? Because I see inklings of what you built in Denver. I see some type of thing. But when I go look at Denver now, I can go down Denver's list right now. And they got key people in key positions that do something different for that team. People, they don't look at MPJ for rebounding. You know what MPJ is there for? To put that ball in the air. And what does he do every time he gets that ball? That man ain't passing for nothing. Now you can say, well, that may be DeMar. DeMar don't shoot like he do. DeMar don't shoot the three like he do. MPJ is a bucket, right? I'm not saying DeMar ain't good. But MPJ doesn't do the same thing that Aaron Gordon does. Aaron Gordon doesn't do the same thing that Jamal Murray does. Jamal Murray doesn't do the exact same thing as KCP does. They all have a very specific role that there may be some slight overlap, but it doesn't overlap as much as it does on the Chicago Bulls roster. That's the problem. That's the problem there. So if you ask me again, if Zach Lavine could garner that, maybe he could have a year ago. Maybe he could have before the start of this particular season. Maybe he could have before they decided to stick with DeMar DeRozan and completely, who they may not keep, by the way. We may not keep DeMar DeRozan. We may not be in a situation where we can capitalize off of that because we put too much redundancy. We did not get the right point guard, pass first type guard here. Javon Carter, I don't know what idea that was. Why? Some people thought that was a good trade. Some people thought that was a good acquisition, excuse me. No, it wasn't. It was trash. Trash. That's what happened here. AK is not going to be able to get the same haul because he has not solved the redundancy issue, and he may not even have the right coach to sit there and actually get the best out of them to even increase that trade value. But I want to hear your thoughts because I am not surprised that we didn't get Pascal Siakam. I'm more surprised at the amount of people who think that Zach Lavine should garner that same type of respect when Pascal Siakam, as a forward, has more utility on teams that are trying to compete than another two guard. But I want to hear your thoughts. Whether it's love, whether it's hate, put in the chat. Ultimately, this is a AK roast fest that just I'm being a little nice. I'm being nice, but AK deserves the smoke for this. But whether it's love, whether it's hate, put in the chat. I'll be in there with you. Till next time. Can't believe this.